Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Levi, and I'm the founder of Dynamic. We specialize in business process optimization, smart marketing strategies, and data and AI solutions to scale your revenue. This is the podcast, The Balance, and today I'm with a very special guest. Bernard, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm really excited to record this podcast with you and to know more about you, of course. So to start off, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and who are you and what do you do?
Thank you, Levi. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm a forensic accountant. I have my own practice, which is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I've been running this practice myself for the last 7 years. I currently run it with myself and a few other gentlemen that I bring in on a project by project basis, basically based on the skill set needed. My areas of sort of specialization, or sort of what a forensic accountant is different to a normal accountant, as what you're used to hearing, is a forensic accountant is when there is any legal matter that's needed, or the court needs an accountant to testify, to shed light on the financial aspects of a legal matter. They require a sort of specialized accountant that is known as a forensic accountant. It's basically you're an accountant with knowledge of the litigation processes, and obviously through years of experience, you don't have to be a lawyer, but through years of experience, you will have built up knowledge of specifically the court's rules of engagement. That is very important. The courts have very specific rules of engagement as to how you play the game fairly. That is actually one of the most important things in law. As well as you do need to have knowledge, a basic knowledge of the law in the area that you work in. Myself specifically, I being a smaller firm versus the bigger firm, I deal less in so much fraud than the bigger firms do. The bigger firms are obviously much more geared up to do fraud cases, as in they will have large amounts of staff. They will have obviously the IT resources, so they can take on large companies, and they themselves obviously also have their own clients for whom they do investigation. So someone like myself specializes specifically in things where it's more intimate, areas like divorce work, where clients want a sort of more, how can I say, one-on-one relationship, where they don't want to go to a big firm. I do a lot of what they call also quantification of personal injury law. Where people slip and fall, and you sue the owner of the building, where you're involved in road accident. In the case of South Africa, you sue what we have here, what's called the Road Accident Fund, public transportation liability. So in the case of South Africa, we have quite a bit of public transport, which is done by a train. So again, if you fall off a train, pushed off a train, knocked over by a train, fall off a platform. We have also quite a large state healthcare, and obviously, unfortunately, sometimes the state healthcare isn't as well funded as it should be, and that results in some, quite a bit of a negligence, and so I'm involved in a fair amount of that. And then over and above that, I'm involved in also a lot of, and unfortunately, is actually what we call just and equitable disputes, is where it's very similar. I like to call it like divorce, but it's sort of splitting up businesses. And for the most part, unfortunately, it's generally most smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses are family businesses. So it's like when I say divorce, it's the breaking up of these businesses, and then often they end up in litigation, when the two parties can't come to an understanding with each other. It often happens in the case of sort of siblings who've inherited a business from a parent. But and there again, as I say, you need to have an intersection of knowledge of law, accounting, and the like. And then you also need to have a bit of which is quite important, is you need to have a bit of interpersonal skills. Sort of almost like psychology. You have a bit of sort of knowledge of psychology in a way. Because ultimately you're dealing with people's emotions. And these matters, as I say, they're family, even in the personal injury, people have been injured, or they've been hurt, or loved ones have been lost. So you have the interplay of law, psychology, accounting, tax. So it's a very interesting field. It's a very interesting field to be.
Yeah, and your business is called. Oh, sorry. Your
So no,
business is called Bibi Forensics and Advisory, right?
yes.
Yeah. May I ask you, like, what is the real like vision and the real purpose and the goal that you're working towards with your business?
So the goal is, uh, I suppose, in a way, there's the long term goal of always, you want to be on the bigger cases. As you get more experience, you tend to get more exposure, and you sort of, almost like I liken it to like a video game. You move on to bigger and better matters. One of the nice things about being in forensic accounting is it's a very fulfilling job. Um, in terms of that, it's not only that, I've got friends who work in normal auditing jobs, and they go from year to year to year to year doing just different audits. Myself, even in my tax practice, I'm also involved in tax. A lot of the work that I do in tax is debt negotiation, where an individual owes a lot of money to the revenue services, and it's often people who are struggling. And it's a very fulfilling job, is that at the end of the work that I do is you've often settled the matter. And it's specifically, I'm gonna say specific something like in divorce, where it's very emotional. um I often joke with some of my clients, and they often admit it. Is they say, "Why is divorce so expensive?" And they say, "Because it's worth it." And I often say sometimes people are happier at their divorce than they were on their marriage day. So not that it really is. It's just more because the fight was. And unfortunately, these fights get very long, and they're drawn out, and they're costly, and things like that. And so it's very, should I say, fulfilling when when you can end a matter, and you can end it amicably, and you can so. And specifically, what's nice is when you, as I say, you grow in this field, you get onto more meaningful matters, or more sizable. One of the matters I'm involved in, and I can't go too much into it, it's matter which was involved in rural housing and the poor, and aiding them in, and aiding was actually that I'm involved with the developer. And it's a case that, please God, one will do well in that case, that it'll send a message to, I can't say who the other party is that one is litigating against, but law is a tool of, in a way, justice. And you're obviously, we're not in medieval times, so we don't use fines, but financial penalties is often what hurts people. And so it's a very fulfilling thing, in that if you can use financial penalties to influence decisions of people, my vision is to grow into sort of bigger and more meaningful cases, where you can also help, and, you can have a sort of greater outcome on society and move society in a positive direction.
Okay, I understand. And also with your business, what are like certain challenges and certain obstacles that you're facing right now within the business?
So I'm going to say this, and it's like we talked about this because we mentioned the artificial intelligence thing. So artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword for myself right now, in my business. It is both a positive and it's both a negative. From the positive side, obviously, once you sort of learn how to use the tools, and I just recently upgraded to the paid version of the ChatGPT, and it's significantly more powerful. And and I've started learning the difference between the ChatGPT model and the Grok model, and it's an amazing tool. And it is really, really changing the way one does business. My ability to research, my ability to, aid me in checking reports. It's not going to replace me. I know a lot of people obviously fear that jobs are going to be replaced. I don't think it. I think it might replace certain jobs. I don't think it's going to replace everybody. So I'm finding it's a great aid. Where the negative I'm finding it is really, obviously, there's, to some extent, certain client expectations, because some clients now believe that you can almost halve your time, because they believe you can write a report half the time using ChatGPT, which is not true. It can aid you in the research, it can aid you in things, but in the same vein, what's also coming out of ChatGPT is one has to actually also double check the data that one has to be careful of not relying too much on artificial intelligence. There's a lot of, I think what they call it, ghost data, or whatever they call ghosting by the system. So it's not 100% perfect. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in it. So it's great as a tool, but you often have to double check it. So that also ends up taking the same time. So I can get some better quality research in some ways, and at the same time, I'm still having to double check it. So what I'm also finding is that, I often deal with clients, I deal with client staff, I deal with I often have a lot of youngsters that approach me for advice and speaking to youngsters. And my concern is that obviously I was lucky. I grew up in the generation when I was at university, when I was a kid. The internet was actually just born. And so there was a time period when I never had not only artificial intelligence, there was a time period when I was born in the Walkman, the generation where there was a Walkman, the tape, and there wasn't even a CD. And so as the years progressed, I learned to build a lot of things myself. So, I had to learn from day one how to construct a set of financial statements. I've learned everything that Chat GPT can do. All these reports, these fancy things that it can create, and financial models and build and formulas. These are all things that I would have done at university from scratch, manually. I almost joke. My daughter teases me that that I lived in the Stone Age. But my concern, and I'm seeing it now from speaking to people, is that I'm worried that people are going to lose that ability from not having done the stuff manually. And I'm actually starting to see it out there from speaking to students, from speaking to people, that people are going to lose that ability to check AI, when AI makes errors. As I always say, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Yeah. And in what way are you like actively implementing or learning about AI within your business?
So luckily enough, look, I have quite a few friends and family that are involved in the tech sector. And so what I've always asked them to is I asked them to sort of send me, thank God today we have, one of the, again, with all the proliferation of knowledge and the internet, is I've sort of, YouTube is fantastic to sort of teach you about these things. So I've been sort of going online and looking at, the nice thing today is that there are a lot of free courses. And so I've been sort of upskilling myself, going onto YouTube to learn actually how AI works, how AI is structured. I think a lot of people make a mistake is that they sort of almost use ChatGPT or Grok or all the different AI programs, and they almost use it like it's just an advanced version of Google search. And they don't actually understand what an actual large language learning, whatever you call large language learning model actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a sort of advanced search engine. It needs to be trained. It needs to, there's a lot more to it. So I've been really upskilling myself. It's an important, but more from not only learning how to use it, is learning actually the basics of it, how it was created, how it works, what's the fundamentals, what are the fundamentals behind artificial intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
the core principles of what the models are and how they're built, getting behind the engine, and then so that I can really understand what are then also its weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, at the end of the day, ultimately, I'm producing documents for court or for stuff that will be in legal papers. And, one has to be very careful of making errors.
Yeah.
And that applies to obviously to a general accountant as well out there. At the end of the day, whether you're submitting tax work, if you're an auditor that's producing financial statements, that the market is going to use. So your work needs to be pretty much as accurate as is humanly possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
AI needs to be a tool, not as I say, not a crutch or.
True. Yeah, 100%. And I don't think AI is able to replace humans in most ways. Next to AI, what other like key trends in the industry are you looking into right now, or are you exploring?
So the other key trends that I find is obviously, look, the word has been around forever. I mean, when I was at university, I tutored and lectured, and I lectured as well. And one of the courses I actually found I've tutored in was a marketing course, which is a bit, it's odd for an accountant, but believe it or not, before I did accounting, I studied environmental science. That's actually my passion more than. So I like the intersection of accounting and that, but I tutored a course in marketing, and so this is like you're talking going back to over 20 years ago. So this word globalization, this word has been around forever. It's always a hot topic. There's people against it, for it, this, that, the other. Forget the politics of it. It is here. The world is a smaller place. The internet has made the world a smaller place. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine or colleague the other day, and he had immigrated from South Africa, and then he came back. And the reason he did that was he has a very good job in South Africa, but he wanted to move his family overseas, obviously for various reasons, safety and other education purposes for his kids. That being said, this was before COVID and before Zoom and all that type of stuff was around, before we had all these other digital tools were around. And And so he came back, and he said to me now recently, his immigrant, it would have worked, because unfortunately why it never worked is he was commuting back too much to work here. But had he gone now and did this now, he would have been able to do this. This being said, going a little bit of the topic, but this being said, the world has become a smaller place. People are much more integrated. And so what you're finding about is you can't just have knowledge of, let's say, I'm a forensic accountant. I'm in South Africa. I can't just be involved in South Africa. You need to have knowledge of other places. One of the best examples, a friend of mine who's an attorney, he just moved to the United Kingdom. And he was discussing, he's saying, one of the things that in the UK in divorce work is, he works in London, and London is a very multicultural city, as I call it. And, you have a lot of people that are married, they're from the Middle East, they're from Russia, they're from other places in Europe, they're from South Africa, but they're married to someone in the UK, in the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so their fights are less about sort of like the stuff that we used to hear in South Africa, and they're a lot of cross-border stuff. Each party's trying to claim they're from this place. Mm-hmm. And in the end, you have to know the laws of all these different places.
Yeah.
So the world is becoming, as I say, it's becoming a smaller. Take the politics out of it, that everyone has a fight over it. The world is becoming a smaller place. Tech is making it that way, and you need to know. Like, you actually need to know the cultures of a lot of places, because you have to you have to understand. When you're working with different people, you have to understand. It helps a hell of a lot. I myself do a lot of also like work in the informal sector, so I have to know again how that trades and how the culture of that industry operates. But you need to. I'm finding you need to have a lot more cross-border knowledge. Mm-hmm. And you really need to understand, again, how different people think. That is becoming very, very, very important in specifically in my game. You can't just know your own place. You really have to integrate yourself into the world. And I think that's going to become, as the years go on, and it's going to, the pace of progress is going to move faster. I'm seeing that more, specifically since the end of COVID. I've seen that pace move. It's such such a rapid pace. You really need to integrate yourself into the global model.
Yeah. Okay. And within your business, I'm curious about the following, because it sounds like you really have got like a strong opinion on certain things. So I'm curious what that looks like within your business. What are like your firm's core values? What is like important for you and your employees? And how does this show up in the day-to-day operation?
So my biggest thing, I really believe in sort of integrity and playing a game fair. Again, I always tell people and people I work with, and this applies to, again, I'm in a rare situation where, with a normal account, you don't really have what you call an opponent, an opposition. In forensic accounting, you often have an opposition, a forensic accountant that's opposite you sometimes, where you give an opinion and they give an opinion. The court expects you guys to often always meet in the middle and have a discussion and try and moderate your opinion and see where you can meet in the middle. And for me, it's very important is you've got to have integrity. And what's important is you've got to play the game fair. Like I mentioned earlier on, the court sets rules to try and make the playing field fair for everyone.
Yeah.
And I believe very much that there's a time for, as I say, I always joke, it's a time for war, but there's a time rather believe in peace and integrity. Play the game fairly, because one of the things I've learned we have a saying in Hebrew, it's from the old Talmud, and it says, Gal Gal Hu Choyze Le'olam. It's a world and it turns around. And karma, doesn't matter what one believes in, whether one's a person of a religion, whether one person believes in karma, whatever it is. I've seen it. It comes back and it hits you. It bites you in the butt, as I say. And you've got to be. So, sometimes you have an advantage. And I always find that sometimes I've been in situations where I've had the advantage over an opponent, and sometimes the opponent's had an advantage over it. That's not the point. The point is you're not there for that. You've got to be fair. You've got to have integrity. Because you at some stage, you might be the weaker person, and you might need, this game. And as I said, this world is getting smaller. Mm-hmm. What I think what I find that makes success is your connections with people, and again, how you treat people. Because ultimately, you don't know. You're 5 years, 10 years, a year down, whatever it is, even a year down the line, or 20 years down the line, you don't know what that person will be, or or when you might come across them again. And so I find that is very important. These interpersonal relationships are key
Hmm.
in business, more than you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Again, smart people, you can always hire an expert. It's easy to find other experts. You can hire armies of experts, but to find people of moral character and integrity, and to maintain your interpersonal relationships is so important.
Yeah, 100%. Bernard, what is one piece of advice that you would give to the person that's listening right now, an entrepreneur, an accountant, a bookkeeper that is looking to grow or looking to innovate their business?
So it's probably the best piece of advice I ever got was from my principal at school. I was, at school, I was quite a naughty kid at school. Not naughty in terms of criminal. I was just cheeky to the teachers. I was a cheeky kid. I was I was always in detention. I was always in trouble. Thank God, obviously, after school, I went on and did well at university. But I got out of my system. But the principal and me actually, as much time as I spent in his office, we actually got along very well. And he wrote on, all the teachers wrote messages on your shirts, and all the kids, on the last day of school, you write messages on each other's.
Hmm.
Others white, we used to wear white shirts. In South Africa, I'm not sure how it works in Europe, but I have a family in America, and they all wear thing, but they wear what we call civvies uniform. We wear uniforms at the school, all the schools in South Africa, and so we wore grey pants and a white shirt because our winter uniform, and so you had a place to write on it, and he wrote, if you reach for the stars, make sure you don't hit your head on the ceiling fan, and it was very good advice, and I didn't take it in the beginning, and when I first started out in life, but I was young, and when you're young in your 20s, you've got a lot of emotions and things. I try to run with things, I was always trying to, I wanted to get the end very quickly, and I've found, and I also say this to, I used to tutor a lot of students, and I've always said to them, stop worrying about your final exams. First pass, your first year exams.
Hmm.
Things in life, take it day by day. You do things. I'm not saying you must, be lazy and do things very slowly, but you should set, for full tasks
Hmm.
and work towards the goals.
Yeah.
You're not going to achieve like everything at the like your end goal on day one. Even in business, and listen, I find it very frustrating myself as well. I've got lots of future goals, and then I'm nowhere near. I've got goals which are now 3 decades. Even I'm sitting in my late 40s, and I've got goals which I want to achieve in my 70s and 80s, and I know I'm not going to get there until many years, but I take things day by day, because if I don't, you will drive yourself insane.
Yeah.
So you've got to do things in bite-sized chunks, and even with big projects as well. It's the same principle. And for everyone, just take things day by day. Set yourself minor tasks towards your bigger goals. Otherwise, you won't achieve your bigger goals. You'll end up with disappointment. Whereas when you do lots of little small tasks and you achieve them, you actually feel good about yourself, and it drives you the next day to do. And then you'll actually will see sort of, when you do these minor tasks after a month, and time passes by fast. As you get older, time starts going very quickly. You start seeing the days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years. And all of a sudden you look back and you see you've actually achieved some big things. So I've always said, just, it's cliche, but, do take on small things.
Yeah. And I completely agree. And it's funny that a lot of people that I have on the podcast always, at the end of the advice they give, they say, yeah, it's cliche. But then I always say, most of the cliches are true.
They are. They're time tested.
Exactly.
They've been around since the beginning.
Yeah.
As much as business changes, one looks at one's parents and one's grandparents, and I can't really say great grandparents. They weren't alive when I was, but I'm saying most of the stuff I learned from my parents and my grandparents. Anything new, it's like these aren't sort of, the rest of it is just noise and new fancy toys and tools that I've got now to do my job better. But it's still the same principles.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. Bernard, if people want to learn more from you or hear more from you or maybe getting in contact with you or maybe work with you, where can they best find you?
On my website, which is the usual www.bibiforensics. So that's BIBI forensics.co.za. And my contact details are there, my email address, my cell phone number. I'm always happy. Even students can reach out that want just a little bit of advice. And I'm also, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Bernard Balkin. So my surname is Balkin. I'm have a presence on, online. I'm not, I don't have a massive presence, but as I say, I'm pretty easily reachable. I'm
Perfect.
always open.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure also to put the links to your website, to your LinkedIn, also in the description of the podcast below. And
Fantastic.
yeah, I really want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was super valuable. It was really nice to get to know a little bit more about you, about your business, and of course, your way of thinking and your opinion on certain cases. Do you've got any last words for the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to thank you for having me, and thank you for your questions. They're very insightful questions, and it's really great being here. And it's great being also like with, as I say, it's great being with a different audience as well. I've been with other audiences, and so it's nice, as I say, to sort of spread one's wings and reach out. And so I also want to thank you for the opportunity for this and having your podcast. Just law. I mean, again, I suppose it's going to be cliche. Just it's hard. This is hard. Just be positive. Don't, as I said, don't give up. Just like people must just, get up in the morning, do your bed, make your bed. It's the first thing you do. Make your bed. Make your bed in the morning. Get up and just do. Trust me. Everyone's been through bad. Everyone's also been through, as I say, like when you're an entrepreneur, when you've been you go through ups and downs. When you're in the corporate world, you go through ups and downs. You have to realize they're there. Everyone goes through them. Don't look at the next guy. It's not, just take a day at a time.
It's not going to make you better.
It won't make you better. The next guy is not going to make you better. You do your own battle.
Perfect. All right. That's a nice way to end the podcast with. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your words. And for the ladies and gentlemen at home that are listening, the guest today was Bernard, the founder of Bibi Forensics and Advisory. My name is Levi. I'm the founder of Dynamic, and this was the podcast, The Balance. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Levi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.